So what was your relationship to spiritual practice?
Definitely. I started meditating when I was 24 because I developed alopecia from just being so stressed out.
And if you can stop your mind where you go beyond thought, then you might have a sense of understanding that's non-conceptual about what that means.
I'm so happy we're having this discussion.
I definitely have a radically different perspective on life now than I did even 5 or 6 years ago or 10 years ago. Don't go off just chasing psychedelic experience and think you're just going to bliss out and sit in a cave and meditate, because that's actually going to be doing harm to yourself. You know, it's kind of like Arjuna on the battlefield. He says, I don't want to fight, because isn't ahimsa, peace, one of the primary principles, spiritual principles? And Krishna, who represents God, said, of course, but this is your Dharma. You're a warrior. That's fascinating.
This is a crazy story that I would share.
This episode of the Mark Divine Show is brought to you by Indeed. I remember a time I needed to hire a critical team member and thought I had weeks to find the right person. Turns out I had 3 days. When I discovered how Indeed can turn a hiring panic into hiring success, it made my day. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. You can stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs section helps you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored job, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people that you want to find faster. Makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring so fast because you're not waiting weeks for the right candidate to stumble across your posting. They see it immediately right at the top where it belongs. Plus, with Indeed's sponsored job, there's no monthly subscription, no long-term contract. You only pay for results. And how fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to their Indeed data worldwide. So there's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. Listeners of the Mark Divine Show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/divine. So head over to Indeed.com, that's INDEED.com/divine, DIVINE right now, and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, Indeed.com/divine. Terms and conditions apply. When you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. Super stoked to have you here today. You're going to have a great time listening to our conversation today with Scott Britton. It's going to be amazing, but this is more than a podcast. This is a tribe of committed leaders who are growing together with courage, with commitment, discipline, and resilience, seeking to open the hearts of all people who listen, pay it forward, leading with purpose and unlocking the full potential of yourself and your team, and ultimately, the human race. So I mentioned I'm super stoked to have my friend Scott Britton with me here today. He's an entrepreneur. He's a consciousness leader. We're going to talk about what that means. He's the author of the new book, Conscious Accomplishment: How to Use Personal Achievement for Spiritual Growth. It's exciting reading that stuff. I've dug in myself, and I'm really stoked to have a conversation about this right in my lane. Scott sold his last company to Salesforce. Now is pioneering consciousness leadership through his firm Conscious Talent, and a community of founders walking the path of self-mastery. So we're going to have a conversation about evolving achievement into awakening. Super stoked to have you here, all the way from Austin, Texas. Scott?
It's great to be here, Mark. It's been, we were sitting across a table like this probably about a decade ago, and we both have just been continuing
Where was
our journey.
that? Was that at one of the Spartan things? Or
it was at the SealFit location.
At SealFit, we did it.
Yep. Well, we did our podcast remotely, and that's your interview actually is the #1 ranked episode that I've ever done on my previous show. There's like 100,000 YouTube video views or something. So your message really resonated, and I was very excited to just get together and have this conversation with you, because I know that we've just both been continuing our journey, right, of self-understanding and self-mastery, and I'm just excited to just catch up and learn more.
Yeah, likewise. So what 10 years ago, refresh my mind, where were you? What was happening then?
10 years ago, I had just left a startup that had a pretty big exit in New York City called Single Platform.
Okay.
And had basically spent a year doing the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss type thing. I had courses and trainings, and mostly about startup sales, because that was kind of my expertise. And podcasts, and my own imposter syndrome actually made me say, okay, well, I need to go build a tech company now.
Right.
Because
you need to have your own exit, right?
Yeah, I can't be telling people how to live their life and giving all this advice without going and doing it myself. So I moved back to New York City shortly after we got together, ended up joining forces with a close friend of mine and raising money from some of the top venture capitalists in the world to start this software company called Troops. And, what that does, I mean, we were basically kind of reimagining how you could use business software. Like, what if instead of logging into something, you could send a text message and it would update? Like, you think about like a CRM, like a Salesforce or something. And so that's what we did. And
did that work?
Well, there was many
iterations. Like you were a little early with the technology.
We were early with the technology, but we were with the right idea, and we were good. Probably honestly, like better at raising money than actually building a business. And
you know what? Back in the day, that was enough. Right?
Learned a lot of lessons, but we're fortunate enough to ultimately get it to a successful outcome and sell to Salesforce. And that that experience was a crucible.
And were they
of
buying
growth.
the automation? What was it that Salesforce saw?
They were buying. So we were so basically we were the top market leader in this integration space between messaging platforms like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and the CRM ecosystem. So, the Salesforce product, marketing automation. And when Salesforce bought Slack, we were the market leader at connecting those systems. And so they tried to do it themselves and failed. And Slack was one of our largest customers, and they ultimately decided to buy our technology.
That's interesting.
And team.
In
and
order
expertise.
for Slack to work, they needed you.
Yeah, in order for their $28 billion merger, they needed a story and a product for customers, and so they scooped us up, and I think right now our product is currently something that you can buy as a part of Slack. And I think it's used by, I don't know, a lot more people that use it when we were by ourselves. I think it's like a $25 to $50 million a year product. And I mean, it's cool to see it still live on.
Yeah, that is cool. You create something, birth it into the world that's still, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, this with your businesses, a lot of times you create something and you hand it over to somebody else and it just dies.
Dies or gets killed.
In fact, and that's what happens with most of these technology acquisitions is they just die at these big companies. And so, I was just very excited to see that our product actually is living on and being used today.
That's cool. So when did you do that sale?
That was in July of 2022.
Okay, so this is fairly recent.
Yeah, so it's been a journey. It was a journey to get there, and
sure.
Now on to new things.
And you were free after that, like you didn't have any.
I was hanging out. I did have some, and so I was hanging out for a couple years there, and that really gave me an opportunity to. Like, I was going through my own transformational process, and I needed a place to just relax after 7 years.
And not be the guy. So you're not CEO anymore. You're in an advisory role, or what was it?
Well, I became basically at Salesforce, I was responsible for rolling out our technology that we had built to 25,000 sellers at Salesforce and kind of preparing them for when our product was integrated to be able to talk about this stuff and be able to tell the story. And so I was more of kind of like an internal educator, advocate, evangelist for this like kind of new way of working. And it was a very different feel than having to manage a big team and worried that there was enough money in the bank, and I could relax a little bit for a couple of years. Yeah, I didn't have the stress. I was at a big company life.
Hey team, Mark Divine here, retired Navy SEAL commander and creator of the Unbeatable Leader Challenge. For years, I've seen talented people and high achievers burn out, not because they weren't capable, but because they never learned how to master their minds under pressure. You see, most leaders believe that they'll rise to the occasion when things get hard. But the truth is, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. That's why I'm hosting a free 2-day virtual experience. For 90 minutes of your valuable time each day, I'll equip you with the tools necessary to help you build unshakable clarity, calm, and confidence. The same way I've trained and prepared SEALs and CEOs for battle in the field and the boardroom. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then I want to invite you to join the thousands of leaders readying their minds before chaos hits. So register for free at unbeatableleader.com. Hoo-yah. Now let's get back to the show. So what was your relationship to spiritual practice, maybe kind of earlier and up until like there was some sort of shift that seems to have
definitely
changed?
Well, I started meditating when I was 24 because I developed alopecia from just being so stressed out.
So what's that? I've heard the term.
Alopecia is when you lose your hair.
Oh my.
And so
looks like it came back.
It came back.
Thank you.
But I woke up one day with a bald spot the size of a quarter on my beard, and my cousin literally had lost all of his hair.
I now remember the story from your book.
Yeah. So I was afraid that I was just going to be like this freak, in my mid 20s with no eyebrows. And
that's just from stress.
That was just from stress.
So it's an autoimmune issue, probably?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not sure how it works, but most people that develop alopecia is stress related. And so that got me as a meditator. And I remember, box breathing meditation, some of the stuff that you teach, like that was a part of my flow. But I never was really relating to it as like anything beyond managing my stress and anything really related to understanding myself and understanding my mind. And that inflection point, the big inflection point there was the first time that I had a plant medicine experience. And so in the middle of my start building my startup, I was pretty confused because here I was like Forbes 30 under 30, had raised tens of millions of dollars for a company, living in Manhattan, had a beautiful girlfriend, like had a 6-pack, like I had all the things, right? Yeah, and I was
all
like,
systems go except for
my joy.
Except for your joy.
Except for my joy. Yeah. And I was such a disciplined, intense guy. Mm-hmm. Like I was a college athlete, and that was just like how I thought the way that the world worked. If you wanted to make shit happen, you had to like be incredibly intense. And in that intensity, I had lost a lot of the joy, right? Mm-hmm. And so a friend had invited me to this retreat, and that was the first time that it was an ayahuasca retreat, to be specific. That was the first time that I had kind of zoomed out of my own consciousness, mm-hmm. and was able to see like what was going on, mm-hmm. and also make contact with, a deeper essence. Mm-hmm. And
how old were you when that?
That was 30 years old.
30 years.
So that was a little over 7 years
amazing
ago.
To have that experience. First of all, you're not too young that you're unable to really appreciate and integrate it, right? So I think psychedelics are contraindicative for people under 30, in my opinion. Or at least probably I would say more like late 20s, especially if the brain isn't fully developed. You have to have some maturity, some miles behind you to be able to gain the perspective that good, especially your first psychedelic experience, right, can be quite powerful if you're ready for it and you do enter it intentionally, right? You do the prep work, you have the integration support.
Absolutely.
But to have it that young is, not too young, but young enough to where now you can put it to work. That's cool. I don't think I had my first psychedelic experience until maybe 6 or 8 years ago. So I was in my early 50s.
Nice. I'm curious what that was like for you.
Yeah. Well, it was ayahuasca. Actually, no, it's funny you should say this. It was not ayahuasca. There's a friend of mine named Dr. Martin Polanco. Yeah, he's a pioneer with using ibogaine and 5-LEO-DMT for healing vets. Huge success rate. And he's got a program called the Mission Within down in Tijuana, because of course it's not legal in the States yet. So anyways, I had befriended him. We were talking about vets and SEALs, and I was going to refer people down, and I feel blessed, Scott, because I got through the SEALs relatively unscathed. 20 years. I didn't have the hardcore, deployment after deployment during the global war on terror. I did go to Iraq, but I wasn't like anything, some of my teammates experienced. And furthermore, I'd been meditating and doing breath work and martial arts and yoga since I was in my 20s, right? And so I had a lot of that pre-resiliency, a lot of, so I was feeling like I came out pretty good. But I always had this nagging thought that there's more to post-traumatic stress and the experience of being an lead operator than meets the eye. And I was concerned about TBI. Because this is still new, but information, they haven't done a lot of research, but I had a sense that all special operators have TBI at some level because every time you shoot a gun, we shoot thousands.
What does TBI stand for?
Traumatic brain injury. There's all sorts of, every time you shoot a gun, you're getting micro-traumatized, right? Every time you blow something up, there's trauma. Every time you hit the ground hard, there's trauma. And this trauma will just kind of accumulate over time. And you may not, especially if you have a lot of good coping mechanisms, healthy mechanisms like you and I have, you may not experience any side effects until, right?
Yeah, then just something
until
flips.
Suddenly they show up in your 70s or 80s. And then they show up like they are with these soccer players and football players. It's like serious
I was going to say,
dementia,
I was a college football player, and I have friends
TBI,
whose memories are gone.
Yeah. Same thing with contact sports. So I looked at psychedelics as one prong of a preventative maintenance program. And so I was intrigued. And that's how I got hooked up with Martine. Anyways, Martine ambushed me in a good-natured way. He's like, yeah, I'll hook you up. And he showed up at SEALFIT with no preparation, right? He might have emailed me something, and you know how busy we are. Like, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a Navy SEAL. I can handle this, right? Bring it on. And I had a huge burrito for lunch. My stomach was full of this whatever junk. And he comes into my office, closed the door, and he goes, "Okay, this is something called the desert toad."
Okay, wow.
And it releases something called 5-LEO-DMT, and it's really short, and there's no side effects, and they call it the God molecule. And you ready for this? I'm like, sure. You can see my arrogance, right? And I just had no idea what the fuck was coming. Hey, team, you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. During the Unbeatable Leader Challenge, you'll learn the same techniques I used as a Navy SEAL and trained other SEALs to perform under fire. Breath control, focused awareness, and the daily habits to turn stress into strength. In just 2 days, 90 minutes a day, you'll experience what it feels like to operate with calm, confidence, and clarity, not chaos. Thousands have already used this system to reset their focus, lead their teams with confidence. And now you can experience for yourself completely free, because my mission is to get these tools in the hands of 1 million people this year. Will you be one of them? Go to unbeatableleader.com or click the link below to register for free. Be proactive, not reactive, and train your mind that leads it all. I'll see you in training. Hoo-yah. Now, let's get back to the show. And so he gives me this stuff, and I immediately lay down, and my world just exploded, right? I'm just expanding out in the universe, and I'm seeing all these geometric symbols, and I'm completely dissolving. And then everything kind of gathers up and starts going down this chute. And I felt myself dying. And I now know that I shouldn't have resisted that. I should just surrender to that. That was the death of my ego. But I wasn't prepared for it. And my mind was strong enough from the 30 years of meditation that I had already, where I just looked at that and I said, not now. And I forced myself to jump up to my knees, and I just stood there, kneeled there, box breathing, and there were 3 Martines, right? There were 3 of them. I was staring at 3 guys, and I'm just breathing, until slowly they began to merge back into one. And I finally was able to vocalize, right? Come back into like dualistic language, dualistic thinking. And I looked at him, I said, "Martin, what the hell was that?"
Yeah, just a casual lunch visit.
What are you trying to do to me?
Man.
But I still was a profound experience because that expansion and dissolution, I can, like, just thinking about it brings me back there. But I had a very clear, intuitive sense that that was incomplete, that there was more work to do. And so that led me to, like, seek out, an ayahuasca experience. And that was really beautiful. And, my body didn't respond well. Like, nobody's does, but I really do not like the physical side effects of that. So I did 3 of those, and then I did an ibogaine. And this is where it gets interesting. So I went down with Martine and some other vets, and I wanted to, if I recommend something to people, I don't want to recommend something I haven't experienced. I don't think it's authentic, right?
Yeah.
So I brought some people down there, some vets, and I said, I'm going to do it with you. And this is where it gets also more interesting is, I relate this to meditation. Now, psychedelics can have a really powerful kind of crack you open your heart, and also open your perspective so that you can see the traumas and objectify them and then kind of work through. And I had done a lot of that. Like, I'd been doing therapy for 30 years, EMDR, meditation, a lot of visualization. And so when I went down, and everyone's saying that ibogaine is a real ass kicker, right? And it's like lasts for 24 hours and everything. And they have medical assistance because you want to make sure they monitor your heart rate and everything. So they give me the medicine, and I'm just waiting for it. And I just go into this really nice, pleasant meditation that lasted all night long. Not a single psychedelic effect.
Whoa.
Not one.
Okay.
And then they process the next day, and then they go in on Sunday with the Desert Toad again, the 5-LEO DMT, and I'm excited because I'm thinking maybe I'll have a similar experience and I'll get to complete it this time. Nothing. Didn't experience anything. And what I gleaned from that is that, like, psychedelics work at the level of the mind, and awakened awareness is beyond the mind. It's just consciousness itself. The mind exists within the field of conscious awareness, and when you meditation eventually will pop you into the field of conscious awareness, which is inclusive of the mind, but beyond the mind. And so if you're operating from that level or that expansiveness, when you do a psychedelic or something which is operating at the level of the mind, it eventually won't affect you at all.
Well, that's what, when you read the Ram Dass stories, him going to India and giving LSD to the monks, and they're
just thinking that same story. He gave it to Ramana Maharshi, right? And it literally had to give him like 8 doses. And Maharshi just finally opened his eyes and said, "Oh, I see why you like this stuff, because you want to feel powerful." Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So that's why I'm very cautious, or I caution people about psychedelic use for anything beyond serious emotional development, and to kind of open their aperture so they can do further work without it. And the people who are using it either recreationally because it feels good or as a spiritual practice are actually strengthening their ego when they want to be dissolving the ego.
I would agree with that. I feel like I went through my own version of that, where I had this wonderful experience with ayahuasca, and my classic optimizer self was like, I'm going to do this every quarter. And, I'm going to get business ideas, secrets.
There's whole communities of entrepreneurs that are doing that.
Yeah. And that next experience, what happened to me is I had a thing called a Kundalini awakening process begin, and I was completely rocked.
Did you feel it coming up the spine? And
I felt it coming up, but my body was shaking for 6 hours straight.
Sure.
And then it continued to have those tremors every day, every time I quieted my mind for years.
Interesting.
And I was totally destabilized.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, in my opinion, like the universe is like, you need to have reverence, and you're not using these things.
Right. It's very dangerous in terms of mental stability to have a premature Kundalini awakening. It is. Right. In fact, I don't know if you know this story, but Kundalini yoga, right, was a secret yoga. Yep. And the founder forbid it to be transported to the West because they said Westerners aren't ready for this. And the guy who brought Kundalini basically ignored him. He says, well, I think they are. And there have been countless people who have practiced Kundalini yoga who have blown their corks, destabilized themselves psycho-emotionally, because it takes many years of preparation for the body to be able to handle the energy when it's released, that serpentine energy that's released at the base of the spine, and it rushes up the spine and literally will burst out the crown of the head. And that's 50%. That's half the experience. The other half is basically then bringing it back down and reintegrating. And nobody knew how to do that. And so if like you ever go to a Kundalini yoga class, the guy who's standing in the corner spinning around with his white robes on, so like he cannot operate in society anymore.
Well, that too. And here's the thing. After that happened to me, I thought that I should be, I'm like, well, I was Googling my symptoms because no one could tell me what was going on with me. I had, literal 36-hour brain study done on me with no, like, you're fine. And I'm like, do you guys see me? I'm like shaking like a jumping bean over here.
Yeah. And nervous system was all out of whack.
The people at the Kundalini yoga classes I would learn weren't equipped to even understand what was happening. And so it's like all these people teaching about this experience that they haven't even maybe had. And and I didn't touch psychedelics for years after that. And I think I'm probably, I mean, who knows, but like my current posture is like,
unless you're really intuitively called to it.
This is a crazy story that I would share. So I was having some health issues, probably about 4 or 5 years after that. And I was just very desperate and had kind of gotten into the understanding that like my physical body is communicating symptomology that's oftentimes related to my consciousness. Things were just showing up, and it was like there was something that needed to be brought into my awareness. And, I was getting desperate. And so I did go back to ayahuasca and had a good experience. And that, they say about ayahuasca, they're like, it'll call to you when you're ready for it or it's needed or whatever. And so this shaman was like, hey, I actually am tired of running these retreats, and I want to just work with like 10 high performers over the course of the year. And I have this new energy healing technique that I learned from this tribe in the Andes, and it really works on stubborn consciousness patterns. And like, that's what I want to like help people with. And, would you be interested in being a guinea pig for that? And I was like, well, I got a lot of stuff going on in my consciousness that I don't like. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. He shows up, he flies into Austin, shows up to my house. He's setting up buckets around my living room. My wife said she was up for the experience. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, is this that intense that we would need buckets? He's like, oh, we're doing this with ayahuasca. And so it was like, it like literally showed up on my doorstep. And I haven't touched it since, but like sometimes like it will literally appear that, that clearly to you that maybe that is ready for you. Maybe you're ready for that.
That's fascinating.
I appreciate hearing about your experience, man. And so has psychedelics played a major role for you at all since that experience?
No, I don't think so. I had an interesting experience with ketamine, and I'm not really sure about ketamine because it's a synthetic as opposed to a natural medicine. But it was a profound experience. So it has a similar ability to release DMT and open up your mind to these experiences. And I saw like far into the future. It was really interesting. So this was a future perspective as opposed to most psychedelics are retrospective. And I'm not saying that I've cleared all the traumas out of my past, but I've done so much work on it. And I think I was just given a break this time. You know what I mean?
That's nice. Little
And
vacation.
I do a lot of work kind of in future templating and like future self and like I was way out in space, right? And I've always had a fascination with space and being I even for a moment when I was 31 seriously consider, going that kind of SEAL astronaut path, because at the time there was one SEAL astronaut, Bill Shepard, who was the first commander of the International Space Station, and I befriended him, and we were talking about it, and seriously considered it. Since then, we've had two, Cassidy and I think John Lee or something, the Korean guy. At any rate, I didn't do it because I didn't have the educational background. I would have to go all the way back to my undergrad to get like a sciencey undergrad and a master's and doctorate, and it's like 10 years. I would have been
That's
over
a lot
40.
to do at 31.
Yeah, so I was like, that's not a realistic goal, so I scrapped it. But it now makes sense that I was drawn there because there's a future self that is that, right? Probably for a lot of people, actually, given where we're going. At any rate, what's fascinating is,
What did you see?
well, it wasn't beautiful because it was like, and this kind of ties to the warrior in me. Like there was a major battle that I was part of, and then I survived, and I was like standing on this charred, wrecked, like intergalactic battleship, with
The sci-fi movies are
surveying the carnage, and it makes sense. I am absolutely enthralled with sci-fi audiobooks. Because when I listen to a sci-fi audiobook, literally I'm right there and I can see. It's more vivid to me than watching it on TV, or I would say as vivid. It's fascinating. So what interesting part about this though is ketamine generally will last, depending if you do an oral or if they inject it, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the dosage, and then it just wears off really quickly and you're back to your normal self. So you don't have kind of the long aftertail like ayahuasca, where you can still feel like you're in it all day long the next day. But as I was coming down or out of it, I literally made this statement to my wife and the doctor was there, and he's like, I'm having trouble fitting back into my body. Like I had the sense that my consciousness was just didn't want to come back into this body, and it was so expansive that the body felt really constricting to it. And that was really interesting to me because, from what I know from my studies and my meditation is that's actually quite accurate. And that our bodies actually encapsulate just a small percentage of our essential nature. Isn't that interesting? So that's what that taught me. I was like, oh, I am a spiritual being. This isn't just in my head, right? So a lot of times you're like, you think it's in your head and you're having this experience, and within your head you have this dissolution of sense of separateness, and you're connected to all beings, and the you is still there. That's what Maharshi was talking about. Ramana Maharshi was saying, you want to feel powerful, meaning that your ego, your sense of self, that solid identity that believes it's independent of everybody else because of this experience of time and space that is created by the mind, is elevated. And so Mark feels all spiritual. Mark feels one with everyone. Mark is special because I'm having these mystical experiences. So Mark wants to go have it again and again and again. And all that is reinforcing the separate self. And that separate self, from my studies, is not. It's an illusion.
Well, I think that's what the ancient teachings have all been pointing
That's
to.
all they say. I mean, the Buddhists would call it emptiness of self, right? So awakened awareness, enlightenment is the no self. And so what's left? Everything.
Most people walk through life operating at a fraction of their potential, not because they lack discipline or desire, but because they haven't learned how to train their minds. In a world that's increasingly volatile and chaotic, your physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual fitness is the differentiator. In the SEAL teams, we had a saying, if you're not training your mind, someone else is doing it for you. And the results of that are clear: stress, hyperarousal, distraction, and burnout. This is why I built the Unbeatable Tribe on School. This is for leaders who want to step out of autopilot mode and forge a mind that matches the life that they're trying to build. Inside, you'll train the same tools that I've taught SEALs, CEOs, athletes, and thousands of optimal operators, such as breath control, emotional mastery, deep focus, integrated fitness, and purpose-driven leadership. As a bonus, you'll get access to the Unbeatable Leader Challenge, plus our classrooms, the 30-day reset, the Way of the SEAL, and the Unbeatable Foundations training courses. So if you've been feeling stuck in low gear and you know there's a higher version of yourself waiting, this is the place to unlock it. Join us and begin your 20x journey today inside the Unbeatable Tribe. Hoo-yah. Now let's get back to the show.
I think that's what the ancient teachings have all been pointing
That's
to.
all they say. I mean, the Buddhists would call it emptiness of self, right? So awakened awareness, enlightenment is the no self. And so what's left? Everything.
Everything and nothing.
Everything, which is nothing, because you can't, there's no words to describe the ineffable experience, or it's not even experience because it's beyond space and time. So when I experienced that, even though I was experiencing future selves and everything, I also knew that Mark is not. And even in that guy standing on that battleship, right? That was a future, not Mark. It was a future, not somebody else who had a name and whatnot. It wasn't me. And at the same time, it's not me, right? Because you can't make any distinction between the manifest and the unmanifest. Like the idea, the word Advaita, which comes from Buddhism, also means not to. And so there is actually no such thing as duality. Duality is a concept that can only make sense from the perspective of the split mind identified as a separate individual self, which is not true. It's an illusion. It's a very powerful illusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that you can't even conceive isn't true,
right,
until you have some type of direct experience.
That's correct. No, like I said, that's why no words can do it. That's why they say in the spiritual tradition, especially the Yana tradition, you're not trying to describe what is. You can only describe what isn't. Neti neti, not this, not that. When Ramana Maharshi asked his followers to follow the question, who am I? The next set of instructions was, don't look for who you are because you'll never find it, but look for what you are not, or who you are not. I am not this name. I am not these ideas. I'm not these beliefs. I'm not these fantasies. I'm not these desires. Ultimately, then you trace it back and you're like, I'm not even this body. This body is simply an inanimate object enlivened by life force or consciousness. So what am I? I am that. And that is not all the other stuff. But what is that? You can't say, because then you can only describe it in dualistic language, which is always going to be wrong. That's why you get like really contradictory teachings and sayings about what it is.
Right, they're all pointing to something that can't be described.
That's right. That's why they're called pointers. Or even in the Zen tradition, they call them pointing out instructions, like koans, like what was my original face before I was born. That's a koan is just a nonsensical statement that can only make sense from the perspective of non-duality, but the brain isn't trained to process information from that perspective. And so it like stops your mind for a moment. And if you can stop your mind where you go beyond thought, then you might have a sense of understanding that's non-conceptual about what that means.
So, I'm so happy we're having this discussion because, I mean, how I remember when we first talked and I first read Unbeatable Mind, right? I remember I was like doing the affirmations of like looking good, feeling good, all to be in Hollywood, like all that kind of stuff.
Still
right?
with me every day.
You know, and so like we have these tools that are useful for this kind of 3D reality that we're in, but then there's this like deeper fundamental truth that is like maybe experienced and certainly pointed to, and it's like that holding both.
You have to hold both, right? It's because it's not two, right? It's very beneficial to train your mind because, you know, if you're not training your mind, someone's training it for you. And so if you believe that you have a purpose in life, which everyone has a purpose, right? And what I mean by that is everyone's primary purpose is to evolve. But every unique address of consciousness, which is what a human being is unique. And so the way you're supposed to evolve is going to be unique. And so that is going to be dictated by, you know, the energy you come in with, your karma and the desires and the experience that your spirit is hoping to have. So most people, when they double click on purpose, they're thinking like, oh, I'm supposed to do something.
Right. Build this company.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be
marry
an
this
entrepreneur.
person.
And so what I teach is, no, it's who you were supposed to be. And that's an archetypal energy. So I figured out, well, I'm supposed to be a warrior. Like when I had that insight in my 20s on the meditation bench, I didn't come out of those meditations think, oh, I'm supposed to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't care less about the SEALs. But I had this intuition that I was meant to be a warrior, that I am a warrior. And I'm not doing warriorly things as a CPA. So then I started to ask better questions. And here's the thing, when it comes to consciousness, if you can formulate the question, then you already know the answer. So I started asking better questions. So if I'm meant to be a warrior, and that's who I am, and I really believe that, then how? How am I supposed to show up as a warrior? And as soon as I started asking that question, the Navy SEALs were shown to me. The universe reflected back the answer to me. And so then I went and became a Navy SEAL. But I didn't look at myself and say my purpose is to be a Navy SEAL admiral. Had I done that, we wouldn't be here today. I said, I'm a warrior. And then I intuited this teacher part, right? Leader and then teacher, which necessitated me to get out of the SEALs so I could follow that thread. So those were my archetypal energies that informed how I was supposed to evolve. And also the challenges that I would need to undergo. And also shed light on why I chose the parents I chose and the traumas that I needed to endure as a child, especially in my case to be a warrior. Most of the extraordinarily effective SEALs that I operated had very traumatic childhoods. Why? Because it makes them impervious to pain and extraordinarily sensitive, situationally aware.
Right. The alertness that's created from that initial imprinting.
Right. Exactly. So at any rate,
it's
you have a purpose, but it's not what you think it is.
100%, man. I'm 100% with you. The purpose, there's multiple facets, right? There's I think the higher order purpose of the soul or the spirit that's like, how do I want to evolve and continue to grow and expand and all these things. And there's an expression of that in this world, right? That, is related to the growth as well.
Right. What do you think yours is?
I think there's definitely a teacher archetype that I'm aligned to.
That's great.
And
you had to get to the other side of the achiever, put points on the board.
That's right.
And that is all masking the trauma of not being enough. Because I went through that phase big time.
There was an incredible moment in my journey where I had become, I was an incredibly healthy guy doing all the biohacking things way before it was a thing, like getting my biomarkers tested every quarter in like 2012 and like so disciplined with my diet. And, a couple years into my consciousness journey, when it really got serious, like I became sick. I became debilitated. I couldn't really work. Like it was really tough. And I was just so frustrated. And I remember telling my wife, like, I'm like, I can't do anything. I literally said the words, I feel so worthless. And as soon as I said them, there was a recognition that all of the achieving and striving and doing was because there was a deep-seated sense of worthlessness. And that I needed, and I was completely unaware of it the whole time, but that was the fuel.
Incredible insight.
And I realized.
Were you doing contemplative work at that point?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
and I realized that I had been positioned to have that recognition by having my faculties taken away.
Right.
And
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. But I think that's like how this stuff works, where it's like you kind of have to be circumstantially positioned to have these understandings and to do these certain things. And that was another very cool insight for me when I realized, like, there was a period of time where I thought, like, the game that I was playing was like building and selling a tech company and blah, blah, blah. And I realized that was all just a setup.
That's just the story to get you to where you
can
get to the awakening or
to
the progress.
And that was help with the awakening, but it also was an important part of my Dharma, which, you know, people don't know what that word is. It's calling in life and what you're uniquely suited to contribute, is that I would be taken seriously as someone sharing about consciousness if I had, you know, some accolade that business people would relate to.
Which is hilarious because it has nothing.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to do with consciousness. And so, but that, you know, that's just kind of how life uniquely positioned me to help others. And
no, I had something similar with my PhD, right? I got my PhD not because I needed to learn more about leadership. I've been training and developing leaders for 30 years. But like I said, not two, right? We're in this world, right? People think that if you evolve to a certain level, then you can just kind of like float away and not engage anymore, and you're just like in bliss land. And that's a mistake, because no, we're here for a reason. Especially, this is my view, especially people who are evolved at critical times in humans, like humanity's evolution, and we're at a critical time.
Maybe the most critical one that
we've
had
in this cycle, right? If you think of like
pre-Atlantis or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. There are other cycles probably on this planet that we just have no evidence of, or it's been buried. So if you're here and you're conscious or aware or feeling evolved and, dare I say, awakened, which again is a bold claim and I'll never make, but I definitely have a radically different perspective on life now than I did even 5 or 6 years ago or 10 years ago. Then it's because you're a warrior and you're needed. And so don't go off just chasing psychedelic experience and think you're just going to bliss out and sit in a cave and meditate, because that's actually going to be doing harm to yourself, because you're not fulfilling your karmic duty. You know, it's kind of like Arjuna on the battlefield, and Krishna says, I don't want to fight, because isn't ahimsa, a peace, you know, one of the primary principles, spiritual principles? And Krishna, who represents God, said, of course, but this is your Dharma. You're a warrior. So if you don't go to the battlefield and fulfill your dharmic principles, then you're going to accrue suffering. You're going to bring suffering to yourself and others. And humanity needs you right now, right? To rid this evil.
This I had a very interesting experience in the past year that's a mirror to exactly what you're saying, where I had gotten really frustrated with health stuff and some of the things happening in the U.S. And I
just want to run away sometimes.
And me and my family moved to Costa Rica. we were like, we're gonna go down there. We're gonna go check out what living in Costa Rica is like. I'm tired of this just nonsense. Like, I just want to like do my thing, raise my family in a healthy place and be healthy. And man, the random shit that popped up when we got down there that made it clear that was not our place.
Right.
It was like within 3 months, we had 2 emergency medical things, like all different types of inconveniences. And it was clear to me that that wasn't our place, but I was also supposed to be in the fight.
Right. If you shy from the fight, if you don't go in the arena, then universe is going to start poking and prodding and smacking you down. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention to the signs. Life is always always guiding you.
So here's a bold saying: spiritual development should bring you more fully into embodying your mission, more fiercely and more purposely, more with more clarity. So it's not going to, anything that's going to take you away, then you have to really check that you've just kind of slipped into one of the biggest obstacles, which is detachment, as opposed to extremely curious non-attachment.
Good
right?
distinction.
So you can be fully engaged in the arena, like, we're going to get this done, and we're going to build this, and we're going to solve this, and we're going to help these people, and we're going to, or teach in a certain way, even if like people are taking shots at you all left and right, because that's who I am. But I'm not going to be caught up in the drama. Like, it's just really interesting. Look how life is playing out, and look how caught up in the drama those unawakened people are. I mean, that's normal. That's the vast majority, and that's what the cause of suffering is to take the illusion as real. That's to believe yourself, your importance, right? To believe your own bullshit. So what we do is we re-enter the fight, but we don't take ourselves that seriously anymore.
And it turns out that's a hell of a lot more enjoyable way to live.
It sure is.
And I know I'm so happy you're sharing this information, because this exact like thing that we're talking about was the major point of confusion for me in my journey, where it was like, did the achiever game, okay, the spiritual thing is actually where it seems like it's at. Like when I had some of these big peak experiences and kind of saw the hollowness of trying to achieve to feel good. And the archetypes in our society were go do a Ram Dass and move to India, go meditate 10 hours a day, go do psychedelics every weekend. Like there wasn't a lot of people that were living a householder path that was like, okay, how do you actually,
which is the hardest path.
Right. And it took me a while to figure it out. And I was fortunate enough to meet a very great teacher who is just like, you don't realize like every moment of every day, like is
that's
your
practice.
Path.
Yeah.
Like, that's your practice.
Life is a practice.
That's
one day at a time.
And by the way, the complexities of operating in the business world and modernity are actually a much more probably accelerated path for your spiritual evolution than if you went and pieced out and had all your meals taken care of and didn't have to worry about money and didn't have to deal with people. And that's not the message that has been packaged up for our culture. And so I'm excited that you're talking about it. And it's one of the reasons I wrote the book.
That's awesome. I think it's exciting because like similar to what we started talking about with Unbeatable Mind, doing the things that actually, I don't want to use the word strengthen the ego, but focus, right? And clarify and strengthen your ability to operate in the real world. So like box breathing, attention control, concentration training, right? I teach that double barrel power in Unbeatable Mind. Developing the capacity to to find that curious non-attachment through witnessing, which will accrue naturally through a long process of well-constructed meditation, right? Not just following the next guided visualization, but like really, really following your mind inward until you can like begin to pop and separate from I and thinking. And they're different. And you can look at the thoughts that are happening and things that are happening in life and say, that's interesting. Look at those thoughts that are happening. That's not me. Right? So that's powerful.
Yeah. And life will test you with that.
For sure.
It'll give you some really shitty thoughts.
The experience it happens once in a while. It's like a peak experience and then it merges back. But you keep training and then it happens again and it stays for longer. Then it merges back. And then eventually it stays for longer and longer and longer, but your identity is still here. And then eventually it goes pop and your identity is here. Right? So the challenges along the way are to get you to keep popping out into this witnessing perspective, which is beyond space and time, contextual awareness versus content awareness. And the reason I'm saying this is all of that requires your mind to be very strong. And so we do these things that actually strengthen the mind, strengthen the personality, focus it, get more clarity and understanding, until all of a sudden you can pop out of that where the ego is now confident enough in itself that it's not going to lose anything. It's not giving anything up. And so it releases this need to hold on. And finally it just releases. It's like it releases the grip. And it's able to take a secondary posture.
Well, yeah, it's
not
who's the servant and who's the master.
Right. It becomes the
switch.
servant, right? So that's saying, right? The ego is a good servant, but it's a lousy master. So the personality doesn't suddenly dissolve and you become some vacuous, like Buddhist monk who's with a shaved head and a robe looking like all the other Buddhist monks. That's a flaw in their system, right? The personality actually comes alive, but it's still there. You just don't take it seriously because you know it's not a substantially independent thing. It's all conditioning, but it also has a purpose in this life, and now, darn it, you're gonna fulfill that because now you understand your true power as a spiritual being having this human existence, and this holographic representation is just a mere fragment of your true power as a spiritual being.
Well, this is the flip side of the coin that I again wish the programming was different around, was that I think a lot of people hear the word spirituality and they go, okay, that's soft. Like I know in the business world, it's like, I don't want to lose my edge. Why would I go do some woo-woo stuff and spirituality? And there certainly is some of that exists. But if you're really on
it's a misinterpretation.
It's a misinterpretation. And there is an incredible amount of human potential that is available to all of us when we do start to explore these facets of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And
some of the most spiritually advanced people that I've ever known are like freaking warriors, and people in the community that you're talking about, right? Who are like, oh, I won't even kill a fly or an ant. Well, yeah, you're not going to intentionally just go out and whack a fly or an ant. Someone asked the Buddha this question about peace and violence, and not Buddha, but Dalai Lama, and he said, yeah, our intention is not to harm anything. But if something is going to harm you, right, there's a good chance you shouldn't allow it. Or your loved ones, or your way of life.
It doesn't mean passivity.
Right. There's a reason that there are warriors. If this is all consciousness, and everything is, then it's all in balance. How does it stay in balance? Well, there's evil and there's good, and there's people who keep the balance. And they're warriors and sheepdogs, right? And so they ride the line between violence and goodness. But boy, you've got it to do it like the Apache tradition really got this well. Like the Apache tradition knew that that's the last option. The true warrior is the last to pick up the weapon or the sword.
But they can.
They can. So they have to train for it. And in the training, this is like the martial arts or even yoga, right? Yoga was the foundation for martial arts. That's the mastery of the body, mind, and spirit, the integration of body, mind, and spirit. And that's the complete integration mastery where you have control over your body to that level where you can do pretty extraordinary things with it. And the warrior has to do extraordinary things. I have a great example of a friend of mine, Steph Bass. He was at Mosharif, is that what it's called? Wherever the Afghanistan, where there's a prison, and I don't know if they're Taliban or what. We're going for a while here.
It's all good.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
They had captured the CIA guy named Johnny Spann or something, and so they sent this Green Beret team, and Steph was embedded with this Green Beret team. They're like, found him, and they're going to try to get him out. But there are like 30 or 40 bad guys in this place. And And so the special forces guys were kind of leapfrogging up, and they were compromised, right? Because there's this big building, and guys with lookouts, and they saw them coming, and they started, so they came under fire. So you got 30 guys against like 6. And they were pinned down, right, behind some obstacles. And these Green Berets weren't going anywhere, right? They're because there were a lot of incoming rounds. And Steph literally describes this experience where like time just started to like really warp for him. Everything slowed so far down. And he sees this white dove kind of fly in and across the battlefield. And he knows, like, without even thinking, like again, this is the idea of emptiness of self, or the idea of way, action without the actor. Like his ego is telling him, this is a good idea to stay behind this fucking obstacle because people are shooting at me. But his body, he finds, is getting up and moving. And everything is going so slow that he can see, like over here, that this guy is like picking up his weapon and trying to take a beat on him, and he just shoots him. And now it's over this guy. Okay, he's the next threat, and he shoots him. And, this guy now has got a beat on him, and he shoots him. And he just starts taking out all these guys, and he's just walking toward this building. And he literally enters it, and he like takes out almost, if not all of them, or most of them by the time the Green Berets get up and follow him. And, of course, the CIA guy had already been killed, which is unfortunate. That experience changed his life, obviously. Like, he didn't necessarily even think in spiritual terms before that, but it was so profound. Like, he was an instrument of God in that situation. Yeah. But he had to be ready for that. He was put there. That's right. That's an advanced soul that was put there to basically be an instrument, but he had to have the physical skills and the aptitude and the integration, right? He had to be ready for that. That's why I'm so adamant in that spiritual practice, or whatever you want to call it, has to include the body. The body is the instrument of experiencing this life. It's not just your mind. Your mind, your body is your mind. Your mind would not exist.
Yeah, they're not separate.
Yeah, the mind would not exist in its current form, without the body, because the body is the experience machine.
Yeah, and by the way, I think, for people out there that are thinking about like the whole purpose piece, it's like if your body doesn't have the capacity, right? If the vessel isn't built and ready, it's like you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. Even if you are very devoted to spirituality and some type of contribution on this planet,
right? Or you're going to be limited, right? And I actually just said the same thing in my training the other day, but you have a lot of problems that you focus on every day. You don't give your body a second thought, but if your body gets sick, you only have one problem. So even if it's just honoring that your body is really important and for your body to be part of your mission, because it is, you need to train it every day.
There's a guy who is one of the main teachers in the lineage that I've spent the most time studying, who used to be a martial artist. Mm-hmm. And that's what he wanted to do. And then he had, all this stuff happen physically to him, and then that got him on his path. And, he's had some pretty wild awakening experiences. And he talks about how he trains with the open awareness, mm-hmm. right? Like, he doesn't view the exercise as a separate practice from the contemplative practices.
No, it's not.
You can do both.
Because wherever you are, there you are.
That's right.
Right. So I'm glad I want to like dig a little bit more into your book, but you already said it earlier, like the practice is where you're at. So if you're swinging a kettlebell, there's the practice. Swing it with awareness. Right? If you're doing a burpee, there you are. There's your practice. Do the burpee with awareness. If you're having a conversation, there you are. Have the conversation with awareness. So you're always bringing yourself back to the moment, because the only place you can have awareness is when you're not in your head thinking about pulling from memory or projecting into the future. That's the practice. And so the more and more you do that, the easier and easier it becomes, until it becomes your natural state. And in that natural state of right here, right nowness, you have the experience of I amness, which is beyond the identity. And that's what they mean by empty of self. The identity of Mark or Scott falls away. It's there, but like Ramana Maharshi described it as a burnt rope. And the burnt rope, like if your shed burns down, your rope is in there, right? Like the rope climb rope. And you go into the shed, you'll still see it coiled up. But if you go to grab it, your hand will pass right through it. So that's what the ego of the awakened is like. It's still there. You still have patterns, like Maharaj smoked cigarettes for his entire life. And after he was enlightened, he still smoked cigarettes. And someone asked him about it. He's like, well, the body picked up this pattern and I see no reason to interfere with it. But it's not him that's smoking. The body is smoking. So that's a tricky one, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Well, you talked about David Hawkins, and he refers himself, he referred to himself as like the teacher or in third person, right? Because he was
language doesn't
so
do
unidentified
well with
in his experience.
So what were you trying to accomplish with conscious accomplishment?
I think there's a lot of ambitious, achievement-oriented people out there that don't see how this fits in.
Right.
And
it's
I know...
Like, it's kind of like those who go to church on Sunday, but then there's really no integration.
Yeah, and it's like... for people like me, like, who it's like, okay, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all in, right? And so when there's even a curiosity around spirituality or consciousness development, it's like, well, how do I do that? And does that mean I go become a monk? Does it become like all of these archetypes that we have? And I was just very fortunate to meet a teacher that was basically told me like every moment of every day is the practice. And every single time that you're taken out of peace, that's a pointing to what's blocking your natural state.
Right.
And so my business became my spiritual practice. My girlfriend became it, like every part of my life, and life got so much richer and more interesting. And so like,
that's awesome.
I think like what I'm trying to do with conscious accomplishment is speak to that audience and say, you don't have to give up any of that stuff. In fact, that stuff is happening for your development.
Right.
You just need to have your attention focused in a certain way to start to work with it.
Right.
And I think this message of integration with spirituality is what the Western culture needs right now.
Right.
And we need new stories, and we need practical tools.
Right. Stories is huge.
And
we've lost storytelling.
Yeah.
And we're letting the narrative be shoved down our throat by people who don't want us to be spiritual beings.
100%.
The idea of spirituality has always been thought of as something that is attainable, and meaning like you can reach for it. And the word has gotten really corrupted, just like the word meditation, because everyone will have a different orientation to it. When the reality is, if we use the word in the way that you and I understand it, you can't not be spiritual.
That's right.
And there's nowhere to go. You don't need to go to a monastery or have a guru. Like that's what the term Sadhguru. Sadhguru is you are that. Right? So stop grasping. You even stop looking. Ultimately, there is no path. Because how do you take a path to where you already are? Right? Any path this is what I was trying to get to earlier. Any path will take you further away from yourself. So all paths, ultimately, their whole entire purpose is to get you to realize that path is unnecessary, because everything you're looking for is right here, right now, in this present moment.
It's a beautiful realization that took me a while to recognize that, I think there's a phase that a lot of people go through. It's like, well, I got to find the right thing to study. I got to find the right practice. I got to find the right teacher. I got to,
and you bounce from under.
And you do that whole dance. And then there's a point, where you start to realize that like life is unfolding perfectly, giving you exactly what you need in every moment to see yourself more clearly. And at that point, once that really is an integrated understanding, that you don't need to do the seeking anymore. and you're right. The place that always comes back to is this now, is this present moment right now. And that's available in any context. You can be a tech salesperson, you could be a coach, you could be an athlete, you could be whatever. And I think the idea that you have to go and do something or be somewhere or be on some path is what prevents so many people.
That's right. It becomes the obstacle. Knowledge and doing become the obstacle. At the same time, they're important steps, right? Because then you learn what doesn't work. Again, back to that whole not this, not that approach. You're like, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. And then you finally stumble your way to like real spiritual truth. Like you mentioned, Dr. David Hawkins, or for me, it was Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj, and who are saying, yeah, there's no there. It's right here. So turn within. Don't look for it out here. Right? Westerners are like, everything is objective. And if it's not valid scientifically, and there's no science project behind it or research study, then it's not real. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right. Yet how many facets of experience are things that science could tell us a damn thing about?
Right.
So that's been, that's the modern religion is science, and
right.
one of them. And there's limitations to that.
Big time.
Limitations to the amount of joy.
But conscious studies are also science, but you just have to recognize it's a study of n=1, and everyone's going to be different. So it's a personal journey. It's a personal journey to the non-personal.
Personal journey to depersonalizing. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Is the book out in the market?
Book's out.
Yeah.
Been out for about a month, and it's been awesome, man. I'm getting text messages every day from, on Instagram and LinkedIn and places of people that it seems to be really helping, and also people that feel really seen.
Right.
Because again, back to the culture we find ourselves in, I think there's a lot of people that are actually pretty into this stuff or quite curious about it, but there's such a stigma around it that it's their dirty little secret.
Mm-hmm.
It's their dirty little secret that they're reading,
they're like,
I am that in their
closet
at night
studying I am that. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, that's my tome. I read it every day. I've been reading every day for years and years and years.
That's awesome.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got Self-Realization Fellowship in your backyard.
Right.
There's
a lot of goodness going on in NCS.
Yeah. So
you need to move here.
I mean, part of the reason I wanted to get my wife down here, and to see it. So we'll see.
But Bend is a great area too. I think that's cool.
Yeah. So, I think like this type of, the more people that are out there talking about this stuff that are in positions of leadership in our society, like yourself, like me in business to some extent, it just is opening doors for others to explore, for others to share, for others to own that this is actually something they're really excited and interested in.
Right. And it doesn't have to be separate from achievement and accomplishing and building great things in the world. In fact, you can't separate them.
You can't. And in fact, I would argue, at least for me, my experience, and this is a whole part of the book, is that there is a phase where like your life gets pretty messy when you're like, whoa, all the shit I thought was real and true is just not what I thought it was. And that can be tough.
There's a
for
few
a
confusing years.
Yeah. But after that, it's like, wait, now I have this like upgraded vantage point that I'm seeing everything through. Right. And if I can see a reality more clearly, then I can align to that understanding.
That's right.
And that makes me a more effective, operator in this time-space continuum that we're in.
Speaking of alignment, you mentioned in this interview this conversation that you believe you're a teacher. That's like your archetypal journey. And yet you started a business called Conscious Talent. So is there any like misalignment there?
Well, I think, well, here's the thing. Here's the funny
You're
thing.
like, Mark, I still got to make money.
Well, here's the funny thing about that is that I never thought like, the deeper that I go on this journey for me, it's like things just fall into my lap.
Well, you started the business before you launched the book, but the book might.
Well, I wrote the book before I launched this business, and what happened with this business is that I started this community called Founder Satsang for entrepreneurs on a spiritual path.
Right.
Because I didn't really know a lot of people that were holding both, of doing shit in the world and deeply exploring this consciousness stuff. And out of that community, my wife was running a recruiting business, had nothing to do with consciousness. And people just started showing up, coming to my door and saying, hey, can you find me a COO for my business? Can you find me a CMO? And it kept happening. And I've learned enough at this point in my life to recognize that like things don't just happen randomly. Like they're invitations. Right. And so, eventually I was like, okay, well, I think there's something that wants to be created here. And me and my wife are perfectly positioned to create it. And so we did start this business that's helping basically companies and leaders who are on a spiritual path, who are on a consciousness journey, and they want to build a certain type of business and operation of people that get it. Mm-hmm. People that speak the language, and companies that you don't have to hide this stuff. Mm-hmm. And we help people find those people. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there's a deep knowing and understanding that, this isn't my forever main thing.
Right.
And what's starting to show up for me is that perhaps this is an entry point for me to start to bring this type of information into companies. Mm-hmm. Right. And so,
interesting.
As like these things will continue to unfold and just paying attention to what's happening. But, that's what I'm currently holding and observing.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
We got to wrap up here soon, but you're a evolved, optimistic individual. I often like to ask people, what's your view of the future? Let's say near term, 10 years to 20 years to 30 years.
I'm thinking that the conversation that we're having now is going to be a much more frequent conversation in leadership circles and households throughout the world. Because what I can tell you is I don't know a single person who's ever opened this door in a big way and says, I want to go back. Yeah. Like I can't imagine going back to my old way of seeing, right? And there's a prerogative.
It's kind of like climbing a mountain. Once you hit a certain, perspective or vantage point, right? It's always more inclusive and more spacious and beautiful. And you're like, you wouldn't want to go back down and hang out at an earlier.
Exactly.
Viewpoint.
And so I think this consciousness conversation, it's not going to be as fringe. It's going to be at the center. And my hope is it's going to be more integrated. Mm-hmm. And we're going to move out of this kind of compartmentalized paradigm of you do your meditation practice for 20 minutes or you go to church on Sunday or you do a big retreat once a year and then you get on with your life. Because that's what we've been living in and mm-hmm. it's not working. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm hoping for and seeing. And I will say, I think there's probably going to be a lot of chaos and calamity as we go through that.
For sure.
Which is what happens in the individual journey. It will happen mm-hmm. in the collective journey. And we're experiencing it right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of accumulated collective negative karma, negative energy, and a lot of power structures that are desperately trying to hold on to power as you have more and more people starting to have this kind of this experience of more freedom and be like, once you taste freedom, just like you said, there's no going back. In fact, you could replace the word consciousness with freedom, total freedom. Freedom to express, freedom to create, freedom to live, free of desire, fear, any lack or limitation. That's what the human spirit wants. That's what the human being wants, ultimately. So the more people and tribes and communities that wake up to the fact that they actually are the arbiters, they hold the key to their own prison cell. That's what meditation is a key. And you have the key because you're the one that's trapped yourself inside. It's just being reinforced, right? You think that culture or society is trapping you. No, it's you. So the more people who have the key, like through your book, Conscious Accomplishment, then the more people unlock those doors and then they turn their back on the old power structures, and that means they're not contributing energy, they're not fighting them, they're not giving them money, and guess what happens to them? They dry up and implode, and a whole new beautiful world that our hearts knows is possible begins to appear. That's how powerful humanity is. We can create worlds with the right intention and clarity of vision.
And I think that's what's going to happen.
I do too. Amazing conversation, Scott. I really appreciate you.
Likewise, brother.
Yeah, you're awesome.
This was so fun. This was so fun to just kind of
This was a different
run
kind
it
of
back.
Great
right?
conversation. I really enjoyed it too. I feel like we're just sitting around, having a cup of tea or a glass of wine. All right. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Mark Divine Show. What a great conversation. If you enjoyed this conversation with Scott, then please share it with your friends and pay it forward. Also, buy his book, right? Conscious Accomplishment. Where can folks?
Amazon,
Go get it at
Audible.
Amazon.
Yeah. I do the reading, which I wanted to do, and those are the best places.
Awesome. And do you have a website if people want to reach out to you?
You can check me out on. I write a lot on Substack,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can search my name there, or just go to my website, scottbritton.me.
So go to check out scottbritton.me, join his Substack. I'm going to join yours. I've just started mine. Yeah, I haven't really done much with it yet, but I got to get into it.
I'll contribute to the subscriber count on
Awesome. Also, it's helpful to leave a review and rate wherever you listen to this podcast. It helps other people find it. Let's get to 10,000 5-star reviews. That'd be cool. If you're interested in the work that I do, go to markdivine.com and discover how you can work with me directly in a coaching relationship or some group coaching or training. If you're a corporate CEO or entrepreneur, we are excited to come in and help transform your culture to be unbeatable. So learn more about that at markdivine.com, or you can also reach out to me on Instagram at markdivineofficial or my LinkedIn channel. So until next time, develop some conscious accomplishment skills. Check out Scott's book and reach out to him if he can be of assistance, and be unbeatable. Ooh-yah, divine out.